industry worth over $22 billion a year and growing. Today, nursing homes are marketed more like hotels than hospitals. The elderly no longer patients, rather customers. At least that's what it looks like from the outside.
Well, there's a lot of marketing, there's a lot of glossy brochures. Everybody would have seen the increase in cafes and lovely waterfalls.
Often it's the quality of the building, the amenity of the building, the amenity of the grounds, that's what's being sold. Often what's not clear is the quality of the people in the building.
When they go in to have a look at a facility, they do see the glamour. They might see a sing-along or a coffee club or something like that. They see the glitzy pictures and they don't know about the ground level care. They certainly don't know about the staffing levels.
They're being sugar-coated. They're being fed a picture, a story that in reality is very untrue. And I don't think that is fair on families and residents to have an expectation of something which isn't really there.
Between them, these staff have worked in dozens of aged care facilities all over Australia, in both private and not-for-profit nursing homes. They've never met each other and they've worked in different roles, yet their reasons for speaking out are similar.
I'm a retired diversional therapist.
I'm a dementia clinical nurse consultant.
I want people to know and understand what really happens behind closed doors.
I'm speaking up today for people that don't have a voice.
My name is Tony Northcote. I'm a registered nurse who's worked in aged care for the last 12 years in various roles as a facility manager and clinical consultant. I believe our elderly deserve to have better care.
They are amongst the more than 1,300 aged care staff who contacted the ABC. None of them worked in the nursing homes that you'll see in tonight's program, but they say the issues raised are common and believe the industry is in crisis.
It was very confronting and distressing work. It was really frustrating to know that on a daily basis you were failing to meet the needs of some of the most vulnerable people in our society.
I think families think that they're getting their loved one looked after. I think that they think that they're paying for that to happen, and in reality it's just not. It can't happen. It can't happen. There's not enough staff.
We're going the other way at the moment. We're reducing the number of skilled staff and increasing the number of unskilled carers.
She's a Holocaust survivor who came to Australia in the 1950s. She was a very strong woman. Even when she had MS, she worked full-time throughout most of her adult life.
Netta Borenstein spent 10 years here in what is now called Charles Brook Nursing Home. In 2016, her son Michael put a hidden camera in her room after she complained to him about her treatment.
She said that the staff were ignoring her, they were neglecting her. When she wanted to get up, they wouldn't get her up, they wouldn't attend to her.
The hidden camera footage captures the everyday neglect experienced by many nursing home residents.
Hello. How are you? Better than I see you.
It's dark when Netta Borenstein wakes. She wants to get out of bed, but staff are only here to take the hoist for another resident.
I'll be back in a minute. Okay. I can do that. Australian flag, as I do, for we are young and free.
One of her ways of coping, I guess, with being in bed for hours on end while wanting to get up was to sing at the top of her voice.
After 40 minutes, Netta starts calling out.
I want to get up, I want to get up, I want to get up. I don't want to be in bed. I don't want to be in bed. I don't want to be in bed.
Of course, when she woke up in the morning, she would be wet and often soiled, and so you can imagine lying in bed wouldn't be very pleasant.
I'm glad to say your face. How would you like it? How would you like it? You still in bed, still in bed, still in bed, still in bed.
After an hour and 45 minutes, a carer brings Netta a cup of juice.
Nice, isn't it? Nice and cold. All right, I'll leave it with you.
When she's left alone again, Netta starts banging her cup to be heard.
Trying to sleep. Thank you. Stop pressing the buzzer. The girl's going to come with your breakfast in a minute.
I don't want to stay in bed. I don't want to stay in bed. I don't want to stay in bed.
2 hours after she first woke, a carer comes to give Netta breakfast.
No, you're never just a number. I'll see you later, okay?
Once she's finished, the light is turned off and she's again left in the dark.
Help! 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 I don't appreciate being here. I don't appreciate being here. I don't appreciate being here.
When I watched the video, I thought, at least my mum can still communicate and she's still able to say, hey, this is happening to me. I can't even imagine what's happening to those people that can't talk anymore.
Hello, 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 hello.
Finally, 3 hours after she woke, 2 carers returned with the hoist to get Netta Borenstein out of bed.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, Netta. How are you?
Don't go away. Don't go away.
No, we're not going away. We're out here. We're here now.
Good.
I guess what was heartbreaking was that while they were in the room, she didn't have the wherewithal to stand up to them anymore. She was kind of broken. She could do it while they weren't in the room, but while they were in the room, she couldn't force it through.
The footage captured by the hidden camera convinced Netta's family to remove her from the home.
From the second we picked her up in the nursing home, she was beaming. And she kept saying, I can't believe I've got out of there. I can't believe I've got out of there.
Netta Borenstein died 16 months later at age 78. Charlesbrook Nursing Home said it's concerned that Netta Borenstein felt neglected, that her family did not raise this incident, and that the home has appropriate levels of staffing. If you had a suggestion as to the one thing that could fix a lot of problems in aged care, what would you say it is?
I just think that homes need to get more staffing, just way more. Like, wouldn't it be great if every home was overstaffed rather than understaffed. That would be the first thing. And then the quality of this staff. You need people that are educated in a way so that they know how to deal personally with the residents, and people that have a love of the job.
Workers are the biggest cost in aged care. Except for state-run homes in Victoria, there are no minimum staffing ratios in nursing homes.
My name's Katrina Legstons and I'm an enrolled nurse. I'm speaking out because I became frustrated with the poor conditions working in aged care. There was just the sheer number of people that you had to look after. So there was myself and a registered nurse in charge of 72 residents. There's no ratio, I guess, for number of staff to residents, so they can just get away with bare bones, bare minimum.
The carers come on at 7 o'clock. They've got 1 hour to get 10 residents up. And so what's that, 6 minutes per resident to have a shower and get dressed and get up? That's how it works out.
Well, I've constantly been told we're not having agency this month because we're $39,000 over budget. So if somebody calls in sick, bad luck, you're working short.
It's not just staff numbers that are low. There are now fewer qualified nurses, even though residents are more frail than ever before. Personal care attendants, some with as little as 6 weeks training, make up 70% of the workforce.
How the heck could anyone with 6 weeks behind them go into that field and be safe and be confident that the people that they're working with have got the best care? No, it's shocking.
You know, you've got very complex medical issues, chronic illness, dementia, and there's a limit to how much you can expect the personal care attendants to pick up things, and often that's a problem indeed because they're not, they've not been trained to report certain things.
Sean Rooney is the CEO of the peak body representing private and not-for-profit nursing homes.
Why not have staffing ratios as they do in childcare and in hospitals?
With regards to staff ratios, as I said, that is a very blunt instrument in order to deliver person-centred, flexible care to meet a growing and changing set of needs. And this is not something
So you don't believe there should be staff to resident ratios?
No, I
Never?
don't believe, because the international literature doesn't actually support that.
If you're talking about high care, for example, if you're talking about 30 high care people in a unit, how many registered nurses and how many carers should be available for them?
Well, I don't know. It depends on what their specific needs are. The point that's
If they're high care and they're bedridden and they
well, you would
can't
expect
move,
that they would require a higher number of carers than people that aren't in that situation.
What number do you think?
It's not for me to make. I'm not a clinician. It's not my role to be able to determine that.
One of the other things that's coming back from staff members is they've told us, on average, they have about 5 to 6 minutes to get somebody up out of bed, showered, dressed and to breakfast. Do you think that's acceptable?
Well, it depends on who the person is. I mean,
an old, frail person.
Well,
Somebody in residential aged care
everybody is
in their
different.
late 80s or 90s.
But everybody's different.
I would expect every aged care provider to have the mix of staff that is important to look after anybody who lives in that facility. That is their home, and therefore their home should be a safe environment in which they are provided with support and quality of care. I've asked the Quality Agency to go into aged care facilities, including weekends, and they have put into place sanctions for those who've failed to meet what is expected under the Act and under the standards.
Minister Ken Wyatt last week announced more funding for a new Aged Care and Quality Safety Commission to improve care standards and strengthen investigations into complaints. But he saw no need for mandated staff-to-resident ratios.
Now, we've not mandated a staffing ratio, partly because each aged care provider is a business in its own right. But if I find that there is continued failings after we establish the commission and after the new standards come into place, then certainly there'll be further discussions in respect to workforce.
My nan was very giving. Everything was about her family. Church was a big part of her life, whether she was doing the flowers or cleaning the vases. Her main physical thing was her blindness. From about 92, she didn't want to be a burden on anyone.
Catherine Logan, a World War II vet, moved to Lewisham Nursing Home, Sydney in March 2016. She paid a refundable bond of $360,000 and 85% of her pension.
We had researched and essentially had thought it was a good place. She had to sell her unit in order to be there, which was her whole pride and joy of, owning her own place.
Listen, darling, you go. You've been wonderful. You're the only thing that's keeping me alive.
No, I don't want to keep you alive, Nan, and you have to suffer more. Within 3 weeks, she was no longer the person that she had been. Nan would never want to complain about things, and as much as when I was there I would verbally bring up things with the staff, no resolution was ever evident, and so I started filming it.
Over 1 year, Dana Verigeth recorded her grandmother's bleak existence and lack of attention from staff.
The nurse today, can you hear me?
Yeah.
She locked me up. It's a reason to get me out. And you know what?
What?
For getting me up, they never say anything,
Yeah.
Just making you in bed, get out. You get out, and she puts the shoes on and the clothes, and brings the washer, goes like this over her face, and that's your white over for the day and everything.
On your face?
Yeah, that's the white over.
Oh gosh.
Staff say this is an all too common experience in the homes where they worked.
When staff are under pressure, they might not shower residents, they might just wash them, or they might not even wash them. Sometimes they might just change the clothes, spray them with deodorant, and then just write that they've had a shower.
People would have to wait. There were some residents that wanted their showers at specific times. The other residents, like I said, could either see that we were so strapped for time some days that they would, oh, don't worry about me, I'll just have a shower tomorrow. But you knew that if you weren't on, that resident wouldn't get a shower tomorrow.
I can't see and I turn around and I can't hear and
Yeah.
they're gone
Both
I
of-
don't know what's going on. Right?
Both of you
But
here-
I do my best, but I can't do it anymore.
Both of your hearing aids were dead, Nan. So that wouldn't help. Within the first couple of months, she'd lost a lot of weight. The care staff would come and collect the bowls at the end, not asking, are you finished? And because she couldn't see and she couldn't hear, she didn't know they were coming and getting the bowls. And then as the months went on, when we would walk in, she would be holding her cup on her lap, and we're like, what are you doing, Nan? And she was like, I don't know when they come and go into the room, so if I just hold it here, I think that they might see it and fill it up.
While Lewisham Nursing Home says it always provided Catherine Logan with nutritious food and drink, a recent study shows around 50% of nursing home residents are malnourished. Staff also say food is thrown away if residents don't eat quickly enough.
There were people that were in bed that needed to be fully, fed, like they couldn't feed themselves at all. And you'd see staff members just quickly go in, offer the resident a bit of food, and if they didn't take it immediately, just go out and ditch the lunch. So you can see these people are so hungry. That was awful. So that's probably one of the worst that I saw.
To be told by senior staff to take their food away from them and take it down to the kitchenette and for it to be disposed of, that to me, to start with, was very wrong.
Catherine Logan didn't just complain about being hungry and thirsty. During a hot spell in Sydney, she was dressed in warm clothes and the fan behind her was not turned on.
I said, I can't take this now, I'm in bed. And within 3 minutes, the fan was going.
Yeah.
And we had nothing all day yesterday. And last night, nothing today. And I said, can't I have a fan? I don't mind paying for it.
No, but it's not the fact that you said you'd pay for it, it's just that they don't have the initiative to damn well turn...
Everybody was complaining about the heat and how dreadful it was.
Yeah.
I've never felt as bad.
Oh, Granny.
Making matters worse, there's a full commode next to her.
All night last night it was dreadful. And David, tell me what's happening.
Oh, let me just go and empty this poo,
Yes,
Nan. Let me just empty it.
Did you hear me say the poo?
Yeah. So when we would arrive, she wouldn't have her hearing aids, would not be functioning. She wasn't able to see, and so in her world it was black and she couldn't hear, and she could smell that there was faeces next to her, and she knew she had to press a button, of which she was scared to do because she didn't know the response that she would get from the staff member that would come.
And what happened when you showed them the video?
They were quite shocked and unhappy that was the care occurring in their nursing home. In terms of actually improvement, nothing, no difference was experienced, and it only continued to get worse as she physically deteriorated.
Dana saw her grandmother become anxious and depressed, like on this day when the radio, her only contact with the outside world, isn't working.
Did the care workers try to get the radios to work?
I don't know. I don't know one from the other.
Yeah.
I don't see anything. I don't know. I don't see any face. I see nothing.
Yeah.
I just see food being passed to me.
And so then what do you do all day?
Sit here like I'm sitting here at the moment.
That's terrible.
Some people, you know, get really depressed, and you'll have a resident saying, oh, you know, can you give me a pill to kill me? You know, they just want to die. And you don't have 5 minutes to spend sitting there with them.
I think the hardest thing was having lovely old ladies and gentlemen reaching for my hand and asking me, please, can you just stay with me a little bit longer, and having to sort of pull my hand away and go and do some other necessary task, because just providing emotional support was not on the list of priorities.
About a year after she'd moved in, the family was called to Catherine's bedside.
Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, and we forgive them.
Catherine Logan died 4 hours later from a stroke.
Well, I think after she passed, it wasn't even grieving her life, it was grieving what she had to go through and how she had to live out those last few months, or last year, essentially.
Lewisham Nursing Home said none of the health professionals who visited Catherine Logan raised concerns about her welfare. The home said it did its best to address family concerns and apologised that the experience was less than they had hoped for.
No person should have to live a minute like that, let alone, weeks and months.
Latest figures show aged care providers hold almost $25 billion in refundable accommodation deposits, money which earns them healthy interest. On top of that, the federal government contributed almost $12 billion last financial year.
Do you think that aged care companies are actually putting profit over care?
Whether they're doing it intentionally or not, I don't know. But certainly if we look at the reduction in care staffing, it's pretty obvious that something's not working.
I saw them try to save money by cutting staff hours down and adding to staff loads. I saw the food that was served, really poor food.
A recent study of nursing homes shows they spend an average $6 a day on food for each resident. These photos came from families who contacted the ABC.
Dinner time was like a couple of party pies and a scoop of mashed potato. Very ordinary.
We would get sausage rolls, curry puffs, and marshmallows for dessert.
And then when the food doesn't even look like food, if a person's on a texture-modified diet, for example, the food will be pureed and it just looks like a glob on the plate.
Do you think it's appropriate for nursing homes to spend $6 a day per resident on food?
Look, that's an interesting issue, and that came up a while ago. And every residential care facility that I've visited since then, and I've visited quite a lot, spend a lot more than $6 a day on food. I'm not sure, firstly, the veracity of the claim that it's $6 a day. But even if we assume that it is a low figure, there are some elements here to be understood. That firstly, that these meals are being prepared for people that have a low nutrition requirement. That this is not, the people that are eating, 4-course meals. So that needs to be understood.
Staff say nursing homes also restrict incontinence pads to save money.
People would get an allocation of 3. There was a pad room, and sometimes you would need more, and you would have to go and ask to get the key, and you would be referred over there and you'd be questioned why you're needing more.
I had to, many times, ask an RN on night shift whether I could have access to the storeroom to grab maybe 1 or 2 to get me through the night. Quite often or not, I was told no.
I definitely recall them saying not to use more than 3 continence pads. And I have to say I ignored that directive because, in my view, if there's faeces on a continence pad, I'm not putting it back on another human being.
One of the things that we've been consistently told is that incontinence pads are restricted to 3 per day per resident. Have you ever heard that before?
No, I haven't heard that before.
Do you think it's appropriate?
Well, I would have thought that in a model that's delivering person-centred care, it doesn't matter whether you use 1, 2, 3 or however many, that the system would be delivering whatever's required by that individual.
At the same time as saving money, staff say they were told to exaggerate the care needs of residents to get more money through the federal government's Aged Care Funding Instrument, or ACFI.
When you enter a nursing home or an aged care facility, there are assessments that are conducted, and the funding that you get is based upon those assessments. So the worse that you can make a person look, the more funding you will get.
The ACFI manager actually said that he wanted every woman that came into the aged care facility to be classed as high care incontinence. and that meant more funding for the facility and also for the individual person. I could not believe what I was hearing, actually. I really beggars belief.
The person that was doing the ACBI, they were given a list. It was, right, you've got X amount of time, we want X amount of residents on this level, up it. I didn't care how it was done, just get it done. That was their role.
So does it mean that they were more disabled on paper than they were in reality?
Oh, most definitely.
People are obviously putting in false claims, and that's why the government have to send out their review officers, because they're claiming somebody's much more highly dependent than, in fact, what they are.
Perhaps one of the most serious allegations made to us by staff is that they were asked to falsify documents to exaggerate the deterioration of residents in order to get more federal government funding. Now, is that something that you've heard about?
No. And if that was the case, that is illegal, and that needs to be reported to the regulatory agency, because that is not...
So you've never heard that allegation before?
That someone has deliberately falsified? No, I have not.
Do all of these claims surprise you?
Yes, they do. I mean, issues around...
How do you feel about hearing them, though?
I'm disappointed that that this is that there is a feeling in the public, in the people that have responded to you, that their needs aren't being met to the level that they feel is appropriate.
Another common claim is the overuse of medication to make people with dementia, who make up half of nursing home residents, easier to manage. A national study found nearly 2/3 of aged care residents were being given psychiatric drugs. This includes antipsychotic medications, which are principally used for mental illnesses like schizophrenia.
They are used in small doses also to treat agitation and aggressive symptoms in people with dementia. It's got problems because it's actually not incredibly effective. It works probably in about 1 in 5 people with agitation.
Dr. Juanita Westbury is a lecturer in dementia care and a researcher into antipsychotic use.
When you talk to the doctors, and I have talked to quite a few, and in previous research that I've done, they say they're often, asked for these medications, and often it is by staff. They should only be used as a last resort, but I think more often, and from the usage rates that we're seeing, they're really reaching for them first.
Mum has always been very active sort of person, loves exercise, so keeping busy. She did look after my dad with dementia for 7 years. She went to her GP and said, I'm not quite sure, I feel like maybe there's something happening. She would tell people, I've got early Alzheimer's.
In October 2016, Pamela Paslow was sent to hospital with a urinary tract infection which caused delirium.
I'm in bed here in the hospital.
Instead of returning home, the family made the difficult decision to send her to a nursing home for 24-hour care.
You're feeling good, aren't you?
I'm feeling all right now.
She went to Kilpatrick Court, owned by Anglican Care in Newcastle, 2 hours north of Sydney.
I'd actually went and had a tour of the place, and it looked quite nice. They had a really nice coffee area. They had a dementia-specific ward. Basically, that they look after them more. It's a secure unit, I suppose, not much more than that, but, that they have special staff who are trained in dementia care.
Despite appearances, Deanne Morris felt some staff had little experience with residents with dementia.
Some nurses you could see. Some would walk in and just had a real knack with chatting to her, and she would brighten up. So some were like that, and others, I think, because it was a new place, would look nice, but they just didn't have that experience with someone with dementia.
A personal care attendant has a 12-week training course. I think they have got some clinical hours that they've got to spend to get their certificate, but their actual in the classroom dementia training is, I think, about 2 hours.
The nursing home doctor prescribed risperidone, an antipsychotic which Pamela Paslow had previously been given in hospital. Her family was not informed.
Before any of these medications, especially antipsychotics, are given, consent needs to be gained from the family. I interviewed relatives, and some of them told me that the first time they found out about, being given their relative being given medication was when they got the bill.
The antipsychotic was prescribed on an as-required basis, allowing nurses and personal carers to give it at their discretion.
As required means if a person's screaming, help, help, because they're in their room by themselves and they don't have anyone else around them, so they're calling out, they'll be given that as required. Bad.
Really, handing it over to a carer that's been to a 3-month TAFE course at best is really inappropriate. And you would ask what sort of training they've had, and I think it would be very difficult to include comprehensive training on medications and their adverse effects, in that period.
They're just trying to help you.
Deanne Morris filmed her mother's fluctuating behaviour from happiness to extreme agitation.
He's gone, he said he's gone, and anything I bloody first. Why would you put an old bastard like that on the bloody place?
During 7 weeks at Kilpatrick Court, Pamela Paslow was prescribed a cocktail of antipsychotics and sedatives in an attempt to control her behaviour. On one occasion, staff, including personal carers, mistakenly gave her double her maximum dose of risperidone in 24 hours.
You didn't even believe it.
It did change her personality. To us, we were very confused. Was it medication? Was it delirium? What was going on? Was she pain? She was lying in a bed, curled up most of the time, sleepy or agitated. And I said, this isn't her, because a month ago or 2 months ago, she was living well with dementia, is how I said it. She had dementia, but she was happy, well managing. And they said, well, this is part of her disease, it's declining rapidly. I said, but dementia's a slow declining disease.
Pamela Paslow ended up in a mental health ward twice, the second time for 5 months.
You don't know where I'm going.
Hospital notes said the mix of sedatives and antipsychotics were a significant issue and were likely exacerbating agitation and distress.
It's not going to rehab, because if you do, there's bloody hell on this earth.
Kilpatrick Court admitted a mistake was made with risperidone and said staff were counselled and policies changed. It said personal carers give antipsychotics only under the supervision of a registered nurse, and that staff tried other strategies, but Pamela Paslow required medication because of her psychotic symptoms.
Who's this photo I keep seeing up here, Mum?
Yeah, I know.
Who's that again?
Me.
Oh, glamour girl. Are you a glamour girl?
Oh, they tell me that, but it doesn't do much to me.
Pamela Paslow moved back to her home, close to daughter Deanne, and with no antipsychotic medication needed. And how much happier is your mother, do you think?
Compared to what she went through, yeah, different lady. Get lots of laughs and we enjoy things. And that was you when you were a little girl? The system just let her down. We felt like the whole system let her down. We didn't think it was fair.
Can I have a hug?
You can have a hug.
Oh, thanks.
Well,
where's me hug?
The Paslow family is not the only one who feels let down. The true measure of any society is how it treats its most vulnerable. On that touchstone, these people say Australia does not fare well.
They're all someone's mum, someone's dad, someone's brother, someone's sister. They're all young ones, and they're just forgotten.
These are people. They're not a product on a shelf. They're human beings. There is more effort put into exporting animals at the moment than there is in fixing a human being left sitting in their room all day in an aged care facility that they've paid upwards of $300,000 to sit in for the day.
They're our elders, for goodness sake. You know, that we should respect them, we should care for them, and we should make sure that they have a voice. And it just doesn't happen.